The County Board of Supervisors May 5th meeting notice and agenda was posted in the Government Center building in 2 places, posted on the county website on April 24th, 2020, and published in a legal newspaper the week of April 27th, 2020. In addition, on Friday, April 24th, 2020, at 1:02 p.m., the Office of the County Clerk distributed copies of such notice of meeting and proposed resolutions to supervisors via email or mail. The amended agenda was posted in the Government Center, posted on the county website, and copies of such notice of meetings distributed to supervisors and media via email on May 3rd, 2020 at 7:28 a.m.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel. Does that meet the standards?
Yes, it does. It complies with the open meetings law requirements.
Thank you. Roll call.
All right, Brad Olson.
Brad Olson will be ready.
Okay. Doug Rowdy.
Here.
Steve Warndall.
Here.
Chris Nelson.
Here.
Tracy LeBlanc. Here. Brian Masters.
Present.
Michael Pritchard. Jim Edgell.
Here.
Kim O'Connell.
Here.
Amy Middleton.
Here.
Jay Luke.
Here.
Fran Duncanson. Here. Russ Arkan.
Here.
John Bonaprise.
Here.
And Joe Demeling.
Here. Can you ask one more time for Mike Pritchard here?
Mike Pritchard, are you here? Oh. All right.
Mike Pritchard?
Oh, there we go.
Are you here, Mike Pritchard?
I am. On the telephone.
Mr. Chair, can I pledge allegiance to asking on our next meeting, and I'd like to have our Jesus, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jay. Reminder to the public that anyone that does want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, so please contact John Bonaprise, and we will get you up here to do that for us. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Second, Masters. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Carried. So item number 6 is presentation. Rules and responsibilities for county officials at the Wisconsin Counties Association. Ben?
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have with us the Wisconsin Counties Association Deputy Director of Government Affairs. Her name is Sarah Diedrich Kasdorf, and we have been speaking for a while now with the WCA, of which we're a member, and they have, besides representing us in Madison and supporting us with legal analysis and legislative analysis, they provide educational opportunities. And Sarah is here to present to us, I think, a good overview of what the county administrator type of government is all about, talking about the roles and responsibilities. And so I want to welcome Sarah and ask her to share her slides so that we can go through it. Also, Sarah, and to the group, we've been asked if everyone could hold their question for the sake of time. So thanks, Sarah. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now. I couldn't hear it first. I just figured it out. I tested this system yesterday at home. I came into the office and I plugged in my speaker system here. And that was the issue. I've unplugged my speaker system here, so I should be good to go. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. All right, I want to thank you so much for the invitation to talk to you today with regard to county government authority, organization, roles, and responsibilities. This presentation is really a first for me in a number of regards. In particular, this is my first official Webex presentation. I think with the current public health emergency that we are all experiencing, most if not all of us for the first time, we're learning an awful lot about technology. And, some of the things in the presentation I would normally say or do, exercises we might do as part of the presentation just really don't lend itself to this type of format. So I'm going to do the best I can to get us through this in a different type of format. So I'm going to begin the presentation and really kind of start out with, why is it that we need to talk about county government and what our structure is? If you take a look at county government structure in Wisconsin, counties are really unique. There is no public sector comparable. If we take a look at Articles 1, 2, 3 in the federal Constitution, for example, it makes it very clear what the structure of the federal government is. If we take a look at the private sector, for example, we know that the private sector has very, very, solid rules with regard to their officers, the shareholders of their corporation, and the roles of their board. If we take a look at not-for-profit companies as well, they really don't compare to county government. And do we think that counties should operate like other branches of government? Sure we do. But we don't think it is really obvious from the statute or the Constitution how it is that we are comparable or should be comparable to other levels of government. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit. What's most important here, and part of the reason that this is one of our most popular presentations that we give at the association, is because it is so important that we have a clear understanding of everybody's roles and responsibilities. When there's a dispute within the county, when the rubber meets the road, that's not the time for us to have the discussions about whose responsibility is it to undertake that function or whose responsibility is it to solve the problem. Instead of getting really bogged down into who, it's important that we as counties really get down to the real business of operating county government. And again, we'll talk about a lot of this throughout the presentation. If we take a look at county government, counties get their authority in many different places in the statute. So Chapter 59 of the statutes is really the place in the statutes where counties get their authority. Counties also get some of their authorities from the Constitution as well. So going back to the statutes, if you take a look at Section 5901 of the statute, it makes it clear that a county is a body corporate. It is authorized to sue and to be sued. We can acquire property. We can lease or rent property. We can acquire land by tax deed. And the statute goes on to say that counties can, in essence, undertake such other acts as are necessary and proper to the exercise of the powers and privileges granted and the performance of the legal duties charged upon it. So there are other places in the statute as well that do give counties their authority. The county governments get their broadest authority, again, from Chapter 59 of the statute. If we take a look at the Wisconsin Constitution, in particular, we take a look at Article 4, Section 22 of the Constitution. And that is one of the most important parts of the Constitution for county government. It is what really differentiates counties from every other unit of local government. That section of the statute says, or the Constitution says, that the legislature may confer upon the boards of supervisors of the several counties of the state such powers of a local, legislative, and administrative character as they shall from time to time prescribe. What we're really referring to here is what's known as home rule authority. Counties lack home rule authority. Cities and villages have that home rule authority. What that really means is that cities and villages can undertake any action that is not prohibited in the statute. Whereas as counties, we can only undertake those actions that are specifically authorized in the statute or in the Constitution. So as counties, we must understand that we are creatures of the state, and we can only really do what it is that the Constitution and the statutes allow us to do. And sometimes I think for county boards, they find that exceedingly frustrating. Now, there's a somewhat minor exception to that principle, and that is what is known as administrative home rule. Back in the mid-1980s, counties did not have the authority, they did not have any authority over their own administrative structure. So our association went to the legislature to obtain administrative home rule authority for counties. Under administrative home rule, counties have the ability to exercise any organizational or administrative power subject only to the Constitution and to any enactment of the legislature which is of statewide concern and which uniformly affects every county. Now, as with most things, there are limitations with that. And the Attorney General has opined on the use of county home rule authority. As one example, back in 2010, the Ozaukee County Administrator asked the Attorney General whether or not he could give up his appointment authority to boards and commissions to the county board chair. Now, Section 59, I believe it's 18 of the statute, clearly gives the county administrator the authority to appoint boards and to appoint commissions. And the Ozaukee County thought, based off of their administrative home rule authority, the county administrator could give up that power and give that authority back to the county board. And the Attorney General made it very clear that that cannot happen because that was an enactment of the state legislature, and administrative home rule cannot supersede any sort of legislative enactment. Now, somewhat related to the administrative home rule authority is the concept of self-organized counties. That's a statute that was passed in the mid-70s. Self-organization really provides counties with some flexibility in the manner in which they may operate their county boards. Under that administrative home rule authority, counties can use staggered terms, and to date there is not a single county in the state that has adopted an ordinance authorizing the use of staggered terms. It also provides counties with flexibility in the compensation of county board supervisors, and it also allows county boards some different options for filling county supervisor vacancies. I'm not going to spend much more time on the self-organized county statute. My understanding, Polk County adopted this statute back in 2014. So you guys are already self-organized. You did that by adopting an ordinance. And again, once that ordinance was adopted, your county filed it with the Secretary of State's office. That's all a county needs to do. I would say that there's really no reason for a county not to be self-organized. Undertaking that step does not automatically invoke any of those privileges that come with being self-organized. Instead, counties need to adopt ordinances that implement any policy. So again, just becoming self-organized doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just gives you additional and broader authorities. Okay, moving on to the statutes with regard to county boards and county board meetings. The statutes only require county boards to meet twice a year. Now, I'd be willing to guess the Polk County Board meets more than twice a year. Would I be correct on that? Yes? So there are 2 times a year in which county boards are required to meet. The first is on the 3rd Tuesday of April, and you, as every other county in the state, met on that date a couple of weeks ago. And the purpose of that meeting is to organize and transact business. According to other sections of the statute, on that date, counties are required to elect a county board chair and a county vice chair. Now, this statute with regard to county boards meeting twice a year really dates back to statehood and I would argue even somewhat prior to statehood, when counties served as, and continue to serve today, as the administrative arm of the state. Counties at that time were really satellite offices of the state. Travel was not real easy, and so the state required counties to meet twice a year so they could check to make sure that counties were properly carrying out state functions. The second meeting in which counties are required to hold every year is the county annual meeting. That's to be held on the Tuesday after the second Monday of November. By statute, again, counties are allowed to change the date of that meeting. Many counties do change the date of that meeting because counties are required to meet on that date. Typically, we see a lot of counties utilizing that meeting to adopt their county budget. All right. Now, this is the part of the presentation that doesn't really play out so well on video. So, it's a quiz. And it's hard for me to give a quiz when we are not in the same room. So I'm going to just go through this really quickly. I think you guys will probably know the answers to most of these questions. I think we all learned these in school. The three branches of federal government. We all learned that there's the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. We asked the same question about the three branches of state government. And again, the answer is legislative, executive, and judicial. If we ask the same question with regard to city government, we could argue that city governments have a legislative branch, an executive branch, and through their municipal courts, they have a judicial branch. Now, if we ask what are the three branches of county government, how would we respond? There's a legislative branch, which is the county board. Do we have an executive branch of county government? You see some question marks there because I think some folks question whether or not we have a true executive branch in most counties across the state. And then the judicial branch. Do counties have a judicial branch? A lot of times when we give this presentation, folks will say, well, of course counties have the judicial branch because we have courthouses and we have courtrooms within our courthouses that the counties pay for the operation of. But that's really a function of the state government. That is not a function of county government. So one may very well be able to argue that counties, remember when we talked earlier about how counties don't follow the model of the private sector or the nonprofit sector, and do we follow the model of other branches of government? That's not necessarily the case. As we tend to find out, the county executive branch is not as clearly delineated in statute as one would say the president is at the federal level. Why are counties different? Again, that gets back to history, the history of county governments and why we exist. Again, counties were counties were created by the legislature, in essence, to serve as the administrative arm of the state. Now, did we need branches back in 1848? Probably not as much as we could argue we do have a need for the three branches of county government in 2020. We do things very differently today than we did back in 1848. So before we get into the next section dealing with the executive branch of county government, I just want to take a few seconds to talk about forms of governance. This is really important as we move on with the rest of the presentation. There are two forms of governance. There's traditional governance and there's policy governance. Under a traditional governance form or model, a board would approve staff action plans and then exercise oversight by monitoring all aspects of the operation. The board tries to keep up with and to instruct management as to what to do. Under the policy governance model, the board states what the organization must achieve and holds management accountable. The board also must lead. The board describes what will be acceptable and not acceptable means. The work of the board is focused on revising the the desired results and needs, and consequently its attention is given mainly to attending to the needs of the community served. So I think you can see there's a distinct difference between the traditional form of governance and the policy form of governance. Again, the traditional form of governance seems a little more like micromanagement in a sense, whereas policy governance asks for you as a board to be leaders, to be visionaries, to really take a look as to, what the big picture is in terms of county government. Under policy guidance, the staff is responsible for carrying out the functions of government, while the board's primary function is policy setting. You are hands-off on the day-to-day operations, and again, you spend your time making policy decisions. Now, as we go on with the rest of the presentation, I think it's important for you guys to keep the concept of policy governance in mind. Just on a really related but not quite related note with regard to this, you may have heard of the commission form of government. If you've been to any national conferences or if you've done any study of counties from across the country, there are a lot of counties there are a lot of states that don't have county boards or county supervisors. They have county commissioners. And that's a completely different form of county government. Common in western states, they utilize it in Illinois, where instead of having larger county boards like we have in Wisconsin, commissions typically are comprised of maybe 3, 5, or 7 members. They are well paid, which is I'm sure the attribute you guys would be very interested in, but they have their own offices, they have their own staff, and they have absolute authority over the operational aspects. In many regards, the commissioners act as department heads. They operate the departments in which they have oversight over. And Wisconsin does not allow for the commission form of government, and we need to remember that as Wisconsin County Board. So let's talk about what we can call the different branches of county government. So if we were to, if we talk about what the executive branch in county government might look like, there are really 3 forms, if you will. The first is the county executive form of government. As of April of this year, we now have 12 counties that have county executives. There are around 28 counties that have county administrators and 32 counties that have administrative coordinators. And the administrative coordinator position, you see them in many different forms across the state. Since the mid-'80s, all counties are required to have one of these forms of governance. I just want to say that don't hold me to these numbers. 12 I know is right, 28 and 32. We've had a few counties over the last several months that have changed from an administrative coordinator to a county administrator. I'm not the original author of this presentation, and I need to go back and take a look at all of the counties to determine whether or not these numbers have been updated based upon what we've seen happen in the last 6 months. I am not going to tell you which form of county government I think is best. We at the association don't have a position on that. I think if you ask others who will give this presentation, they have very strong opinions about what it is they feel is the best form of county governance. What I will say is that I think you guys in Polk County are probably sitting in a pretty good position right now. So let's skip this one too. Let's take a quick review of the powers and duties of the county executive, the county administrator, and the county administrative coordinator. And I know you guys have a county administrator form of government, but there is some value to taking a look at the powers and authorities of the other 2 types of governance. If we look at the county executive position, the county executive serves as the chief executive officer of the county. The county executive authority are found in 5917 of the state statutes. the statute says that the county executive coordinates and directs all administrative and management functions of the county. The county executive has the authority to appoint and supervise department heads. They appoint members to boards and commissions where the statute gives this authority to the county board chair or its chairperson, and the county executive also submits the annual budget. County executives also have veto authority over resolutions and ordinances. If it's an appropriation bill, they can veto it in whole or in part, and county boards do have the authority to override the veto of the county executive. Now, if we move on to the county administrator form of government, counties that have a population of less than 750,000 have the option to create the office of county administrator. And a county does that by resolution of the board, or it can also be done by petition and referendum. Once the county makes the decision to move to the county administrator form of government, the county administrator is appointed by a majority vote of the board. Let's talk a little bit about the authorities and duties of the county administrator. And all of these duties and authorities are outlined in 59.18 of the statute. The county administrator is the chief financial officer of the county. The county administrator coordinates and directs all administrative and management functions of the county government. They appoint and supervise department heads. They appoint members to boards and commissions where the statutes give this authority to the county board or its chairperson. The county administrator submits the annual budget. Now, all of that sounds very similar to the role of the county executive. But there are, in essence, two distinct differences between the county administrator and the county executive. The first is that the county administrator does not have veto authority like the county executive does. But second, the county administrator answers to the county board of supervisors, where the county executive, one would argue, answers to the electorate. Now, the statutes do provide guidance to county boards with regard to the appointment of a county administrator. The statute says that the county administrator shall be appointed solely on merit, and that no person shall be eligible to the office of county administrator who is not by training, experience, ability, and efficiency qualified and generally fit to perform the duties of such an office. Now, it is very clear in the statutes to whom the county administrator is accountable. 5918 sub 7 of the statute says that the county board may remove the county administrator at any time that the county administrator's conduct of the county administration becomes unsatisfactory and engages successor. The action of the board in removing the county administrator shall be final. Now, why is it important here, and that we talk about this, and that this is in the statute? I think a couple of the things that we can learn from this is, one, that it provides clarity with regard to the duties of the executive branch of county government and to the legislative function of county government. Second, it really makes it easier for the board to understand and know who is accountable for carrying out the board's directives, the board's policy positions. It is much easier for you as a board to hold one person accountable, namely your county administrator, than it is for you to hold many, many county employees, including department heads, responsible. And we'll get into that a little bit more later. Again, really quickly on the administrative coordinator position, and I know you guys do not have one, any county that did not have a county administrator or a county executive was required to appoint and is still required to appoint an administrative coordinator. The administrative coordinator is responsible for coordinating all administrative and management functions of county government. That compares to the county executive and the county administrator, who coordinates and directs the administrative and management functions of county government. The county administrative coordinator has to be an elected or an appointed county official. And there was an AG opinion on this. Again, that does not affect your county. I think it impacts 2 or 3 counties of the state where we still have county board supervisors, and in most of those counties, if not all of them, it's the county board chair who serves as the administrative coordinator. Now, if I were with you, I would have handed out to you a big sheet of paper with this chart on it. This chart is a really good summary with regard to the differences between the county executive position, the administrator position, and the administrative coordinator position. So now that we have talked about what one could argue is the executive branch of county government, let's take a look at the legislative branch of county government, and we'll talk a little bit about the authority of the county board. Again, as we talked about, Chapter 59 of the statutes governs and rules and has, it's a huge chapter in the statute, and that talks about the authority of counties. 5951 in particular discusses the broad organizational authority of the county board. It says such things as counties can levy taxes, county boards are granted administrative and management authority only to the extent not otherwise provided to others by statute. Again, 5951 outlines broad organizational authority for county boards. Now, let's talk a little bit about the roles and responsibilities of the county board chair and county board supervisors. 5912 of the statute talks about the roles of the county board chair. I think you guys are familiar with all of these. The county board chair presides over meetings of the county board. County board chair administers all countersigns ordinances, commonly acts as a spokesperson for the county board, provides guidance and direction on moving issues through the board, and as a default position, if a county has not taken action within their county board rules, would typically appoint committee members subject to board confirmation. So the statute does give and provide some very clear guidance with regard to the role of the county board chair. With regard to county board supervisors, I can't point to a statute that says, as a county board supervisor, this is your role, this is what you do. When you take a look at the authority of the county board of supervisors, one thing to keep in mind is the authority of a county supervisor is collective versus individual. That means that no individual county supervisor has any authority to act on behalf of the board unless that individual supervisor is specifically authorized by the board to do so. In many regards, some would argue that the legislature really kind of messed up when creating the term county board supervisor, because that's really a historical term back when county governments were created, and it's not really a descriptive term with regard to what it is that members of the county board do. So county supervisors serve, primarily a legislative function, and that legislative function is largely limited to lawmaking or to policy making through lawmaking, which with regard to counties, again, would be the adoption of ordinances. County's legislative function also continues through its creation and adoption of a county budget, and counties also go through a cooperative decision-making process, meaning you have committees, you as a board, all need to decide, and as a group, and a majority of you, in essence, need to really cooperate in its decision-making process. Now, again, when we talk about basic county board functions, a lot of this is not in statute, but instead, a lot of what county boards should do is really not any different from how other boards should function. A lot of what we see in this slide are really traits of effective boardsmanship. As a county board, you want to involve, represent, and be accountable to the public. You are going to determine what services are going to be provided to the public and to what level those services will be provided. I understand there are state mandates involved in all of this, but you do have discretion to provide services outside of state mandated services, and in many regards, you determine what level of the mandate you will provide a mandated service at. You as a county board will adopt the annual budget and you levy taxes. You will hire, evaluate, and retain good administration. You will regulate within your statutory authority. You'll cooperate with other levels of government. Your role as a county board member, and we talked about this earlier, is really to focus on the long term. What is the county going to look like in the future, rather than focusing on what happened in the past or looking at short-term issues. Counties conduct strategic planning, addressing key issues and opportunities. You determine the county's overall mission and purpose. You establish the county's vision, and you establish long-term desired results. Again, I think more and more we are starting to see a change in county government in a positive way. We are seeing more and more counties say, we need to do some long-range planning. We need to do strategic planning. We need to determine what is our county's vision. Where do we as a county want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And I think that's a good place for a lot of our county boards to be moving in. Again, real basically and most simply, the role of the county board in your legislative function is to enact policy. Now, there are many different ways in which a county board does set its policies. You do that through the adoption of plans. All of the counties are required to adopt comprehensive plans. The counties also adopt strategic plans, capital improvement plans. A lot of counties have transportation plans. You have a long-range plan for your parks. Counties also adopt budgets. And I think one could argue that probably one of the county's biggest planning documents is the county budget, because that determines what services you're going to provide, what level these services will be provided at, how they're going to be funded, and the level of funding. Counties also set policy through the adoption of ordinances. And again, an ordinance, as you guys are aware, is a law prescribing the rules of conduct, and it's enforced by officials of the governmental body. Ordinances are adopted by counties with regard to, in many different ways. They do become a permanent part of the county's governmental code. A lot of counties also adopt ordinances that are deemed to be regulatory, whether it's licensing, zoning, or with regard to peace and order. One of the reasons a county board might adopt an ordinance over a resolution is because, if you adopt a resolution or an ordinance has teeth in it, which means counties have the ability to enforce their ordinances. Resolutions are another way that county boards set policy, but they're really kind of less permanent, and they become stale over time. Counties oftentimes will adopt resolutions to do such things as, express an opinion, for example, on a piece of legislation. We get resolutions sent to our office all the time from counties saying, our county supports this bill or our county opposes that piece of legislation. Counties can also use resolutions to adopt their county budget. Now, with regard to boardmanship, the next 3 slides that I'm going to talk about really talk about best practice, good practice with regard to boards in general. As a board, you want to provide effective governance. And you do that through effective board operations that promote the public's best interest and its confidence in the decision-making process. You undertake board operations that are based on mutual understanding and respect for each other's positions and viewpoints. You also, as an effective board member, support the majority's decision once the final decision has been made. And that's one that is sometimes hard for county board members. Even though a county board member votes against a policy, once that becomes the policy of the board, it is your job as a member of the board to support the board's position. So, you may be asked why you voted against it, but you shouldn't be out there in the press putting out press releases saying why it is that the policy adopted by the county board is wrong. Once you, as a member of that collective body, being the county board, make a decision, every individual member should support the final decisions that were made by the county board. Effective governance also includes long-term strategic planning and a shared vision for what the county looks like and how it functions in the future. And again, you've heard these terms previously in the presentation. You will probably hear them several times again. Again, as part of, policy adoption and policy enactment, that one of the best ways to do that and to determine what policies you want to adopt is through the creation of a strategic plan. County boards, as a board member and as a board as a collective, you guys are also expected to provide leadership. Leaders, in essence, should really model the way, set an example for others, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process for positive outcomes, enable others to act, encourage the heart, maintain morale and a positive work environment for county staff, and hold others accountable to promote the best interests of the county over one's personal goals or ambitions. Again, none of these things are set in statute, but these are best practices that really reflect the attributes of good government. You can certainly have disagreements amongst yourselves with regard to two issues, and I expect most boards have disagreements. However, I think one thing that as a board, you can really set the tone for everything in the county, and you do that by really showing leadership and in finding a way in which to have discussion, to have open lines of communication, and to, settle your differences in a very professional manner. Finally, boards also should act ethically. Part of leadership is ethical, and when you are ethical, you are really displaying effective leadership. So county officials should promote decisions which only benefit the public interest. You should properly administer the affairs of the county. You should actively promote public confidence in county government, support the majority's decision once a final decision has been made, maintain a positive image to pass constant public scrutiny, avoid any conflict or potential conflict of interest, maintain a respectful attitude toward employees, other public officials, colleagues, and associates, and faithfully comply with all laws and regulations applicable and impartially apply them to everyone. Overall, again, with regard to roles and responsibilities, again, this word's coming up again, visionary. While counties do have specific, duties to do such things as adopt a budget, you need to also ensure that you're not just doing the day-to-day role of figuring out your budget, what that's going to look like for the next year. But again, your role as a visionary is extremely critical. Now, the point of this whole section really is that county boards are to serve as a legislative body with such policy, you approve budgets, and you guys as a board make cooperative decisions. County committees. County committees really do play an important role in the policy making process. County committees really assist the full county board in the policy making process. You see a lot of committees will do such things as draft ordinances, draft resolutions. You will make budget recommendations with regard to those portions of the budget that affect your committee. And that the role of the county committees in that process should not be overlooked. County committees do not have authority over employees of the department that the committee has oversight over. So if we take a look at really what the role of a county committee is, counties are really structured so that the committees do much of the preliminary work. Counties do the research, the background. Counties write draft resolutions and ordinances, and then counties make recommendations on those issues to the full county board. Oftentimes, county committee members might have knowledge, expertise, and a really good perspective on what is needed, what is achievable, than maybe some of your colleagues do on the county board because you have a particular interest in an issue. As a member of a particular committee, you should really work to gain some expertise with regard to the issues that your committee serves, so that you can make a good, well thought out recommendation to the full county board. County committees do have access to resources to help them in making those decisions and recommendations to the full county board. County committees have access to county staff who can really assist you with your planning needs. And again, you really should take advantage and utilize the expertise of the staff. And utilizing the county committee structure does allow for a process where everyone on the county board has an active role in planning the county's future. I think we'll skip that slide and go on real quickly to the committee chair roles and responsibilities. When somebody is appointed to be the chair of a particular county committee, it is the job of that supervisor to take a leadership role in matters that fall under that committee's jurisdiction. That includes such things as setting the tone for that committee, assisting in agenda setting, and some of that depends on what your county board rules say with regard to how agendas get set at the committee level. As a committee leader, you will make reports to the county board on behalf of your committee. You'll make recommendations to the board on the committee's behalf, and you do preside over the meetings of the committee. But again, a county committee chair has no independent authority to act on behalf of the county board. You are a leader of the committee, and that is an extremely important role, but again, you have no independent authority in which to act. The point here is that county boards really do seem to work more effectively when you utilize a strong committee system. Now, I want to transition a bit now from kind of the role of the executive and legislative branch in counties and talk a little bit about the role of county supervisors as compared to the role of department heads and county staff. Now, county board supervisors and department heads and staff have very different responsibilities. Again, as we talked about earlier, county supervisors serve primarily in a legislative role, and department heads and staff serve in an operational role or in an advisory role. Now, if you take a look at a side-by-side comparison of what we look for in staff compared to what we look for in county board members, when you hire staff, you want to hire the best and the brightest people to work for your county, to implement your policies. That means you want staff that are highly educated, that have experience, that can pass a background check, are bonded, belong to every professional association, any licenses that they have are current. In essence, when you put out your advertisement for staff, you don't say, I want a living, breathing person. Instead, you say, I want somebody who's smart, I want somebody who has experience, and I want somebody who is active in their professional association so that we know they are up to speed on what goes on, or any changes that happen in the field. Now, when you take a look at the county board, what's required to be on the county board? You can't be a felon. You have to be 18 years old. and you have to live in the district. Now, before you get mad at the comparison, we are not at all saying that county boards are not full of bright, talented people. The county boards are elected for a different function, and you are elected to be responsible to the electorate that relies on the county board to provide services. Implementation of those services is left to the staff. What those services are and the level to which those services are provided, that is a function of the county board. So let's just take a quick look at the county staff roles and responsibilities. Staff have an obligation to carry out their duties in a manner that is consistent with the policy direction of the board. Staff, again, as I mentioned earlier, can play a very important role in assisting county board members in developing policy. Staff makes recommendations and they give professional advice. Typically, staff do not make policy other than internal departmental policies, again, as are authorized by the county board. Staff is available to answer questions and present reports during meetings. They enable elected officials to make informed decisions. When a county board requests it, staff can offer alternatives and make recommendations on policy as needed. In essence, what the staff does is they plug in the details for you. They kind of give you the what, where, why, when, and how. If we look at, again, the policy, what boards do versus administrative staff do. Boards determine what needs to happen and why something needs to happen. Staff do the where, when, and how. When talking to folks about this, oftentimes they talk about the dual role of the county board and the dual role of staff. They will often say that the dual role of the county board requires and has the board enacting policy and holding those responsible accountable, whereas the dual role of the staff is to provide policymakers with the information that they need to make good decisions, and then also the staff implements policy. Now this next slide here just has a really quick example of that. And on the policy side of things, what the county board does. The county board might say, does the county establish a hiking trail system? And then the county board debates the why. Will the system benefit the county? The staff and the operations at the operations level says, how will we do this? Who will build and maintain the system? What's the time frame for implementation? Where will the system need to be maintained? Now, if a problem arises in 6 months and say this county hiking trail system is not yet established, is it the job of the county board to go out and administer the program on its own and start digging the paths and putting down the gravel for the hiking trail? No, that is not the role of the county board. Staff, or the county board in its oversight capacity can go back to the staff and say, just curious, why is this not done yet? Can you come back and explain to us why there's a delay in implementing our policy? Again, if we just look at the responsibilities of county administration, they implement policies and strategies. The focus is on more narrow and shorter term issues. They implement the day-to-day operations of the county. They deal with issues related to smaller functions. Again, county board, big picture, administration and staff, smaller functions. The administration also addresses the department or individual issues, requires attention to detail, and oftentimes your administration and your administrators do need to have some form of specialized training. The next 2 slides talk about a court decision that really took a look at the distinction between policy making and the functions of the administrative level at the county level. This actually was a court case that came out of Outagamie County. The facts of the case, there was some land that the county leased to a farmer. The county board took the policy position to say, we are going to lease out this land that we own to a farmer. The county executive disagreed with that policy position of the county because they said it's too dangerous, this land is near the airport. The FAA had indicated that it had no issues with that. And so they ended up in court because the administrator, namely the county executive in this case, disagreed with a policy decision that was made at the county board. In taking a look, in its decision, the court took a look at prior opinions of the Attorney General. They took a look at the dictionary to determine how it is policy is defined. They took a look at, other documents, other things as well. And in the end, what they really said was that the crucial test for determining what is legislative and what is administrative has been said to be whether the ordinance is one making a new law or one executing a law already in existence. In this court case, the county board won because the county board set the policy and the courts determined it was the job of the executive branch of the county to administer that policy that was adopted by the county board, whether or not the administrative branch agreed with it. So, this next slide talks about what happens without distinction between policy and administration. If we don't make a distinction and understand what the distinction is between policy making and administration, a number of unfortunate things can happen. We can spend a lot of time discussing the trivial. We can read a lot of documents. We can go to a lot of long-lasting meetings where nothing gets accomplished. We will tend to see policymakers meddling in administration. Staff, in essence, takes control of the county board. There's a lot of confusion about what's going on, who has the authority to make decisions. And then there's no way to evaluate the executive, the administrator, or the administrative coordinator. And all of these really, in essence, are not the way to run a government. This next slide is just a chart kind of showing, how counties are really organized in the state. You have the county board that provides the broad oversight, and then we have an administrator and coordinator who is the point person, the person who the county board holds responsible or accountable for carrying out the functions of the county board, and that administrator then hires department heads, whose job it is to carry out the functions of that policy that was adopted by the board. Now, a question we get oftentimes is, well, what about county constitutional officers, and where do they fall on that chart? Now, county constitutional officers play a different role. The county constitutional officers were created in Article 6, Section 4, and Article 7 of the state constitution. When we talk about county constitutional officers, we typically talk about the coroner, the register of deeds, the district attorney, the sheriff, the clerk of court, the county clerk, the surveyor, and the treasurer. Now you may be saying, well, why is the district attorney on this list? Because the district attorney is a state employee. Yet I think, as most of you are aware, while the district attorney is a state employee and his or her salary and the salary of the assistant district attorneys are funded by the state, the county funds every other function of that office. Chapter 59 of the statute does provide a clear delineation of the duties of our county constitutional officers. Since the Constitution does not spend a lot of time talking about the duties of the county constitutional officers, we really need to take a look at the statutes with regard to their duties and their authorities. Over the years, the courts have also spent some time defining what their duties are. So this next slide is titled The Constitutional Officer Dual Persona. I bet you're thinking, what does that mean? Well, that is a term that is crafted by our General Counsel, Andy Phillips, from Von Briesen and Roper. And when he talks about dual persona, what he really means is that on one hand, we want constitutional officers to act as department heads because we need them to manage staff within their offices so that they can be accountable to the county board, especially due to the fact that the county board has budget authority over those offices. Now, on matters of statutory responsibility, though, county constitutional officers are elected officials. They are responsible to the electorate, and the county board does not have the authority to infringe on their constitutional or statutory role. And sometimes that can cause some conflict within a county. The point, the takeaway really from this slide and the concept of dual persona is that county boards really need to get into the habit of working closely with their constitutional officers. When we talk to constitutional officers across the state, they don't want to butt heads with their county board or with their county administration over whose power or authority it is to do something. They really want to work with you. They welcome any discussions that you will have with them. Now, we get a lot of questions in our office about county board members trying to micromanage county departments and county staff. The simplest thing I can tell you as a county board is don't do it. I have seen iterations over the years of this presentation where they've talked about the 11th commandment being thou shalt not micromanage. If county boards start to micromanage at the department level, we have a lot of employees spending time working on pleasing county board members as opposed to performing their job functions and their job duties. Employees also could lose some morale because remember when we talked about staff, they are well educated, they have professional credentials, and it took them a lot of years to build up their skill level. And it's really demoralizing if they think that the county board does not value and respect their skill level. And again, a futility mentality sets in as to why am I even here if I cannot be trusted to do the simplest of tasks. In the end, what we really want at the county level is everybody to work together, and that is our goal. This next set of slides is really tips for county board members on how it is county board members and the administrative team can work well together. You should know your job and try not to interfere with that of the administration. Devote the time needed to do a good job. Read the background materials the administration prepares. I know I've seen this happen at board meetings. I have seen this happen at WCA Board of Director meetings where you will have a county board supervisor who will come to the meeting and open up their meeting packet for the first time. Please devote the time you need to do a good job and read the materials that are prepared by the administration. Don't be afraid to admit what you don't know. Ask questions. Don't jump to conclusions, but hear what all sides of the issue have to say. Keep your mind open to change. Understand that your county administrator is practicing a career. Again, remember the statute says you have to hire somebody based on merit. They have to be well educated, and so you need to respect that. County board members should not become a complaint department. You need to communicate with county board staff through your county administrator or through your department heads as much as possible. You should listen to what your constitutional officers and employees have to offer and let them know that you are listening to them. If somebody complains to you about a member of the administration, you say, listen, but do not automatically agree, because remember, at the time someone's complaining to you, you have only heard one side of the story. If you're supportive of the administration, it shows that you have confidence in yourself and in the county's management team. If the complaint is serious, of course you need to deal with it. Ask somebody to put it in writing. Take a look at what the county policy is with regard to complaints and follow that policy. Don't try to take care of that on your own. Again, try not to surprise the administration at board meetings with resolutions or issues that they could possibly be unprepared for. Again, you really should be working on, hand in hand with your administration when it comes to gathering details on policies that you may take. One last note here, chain of command. When issues are raised before county board members, they should be referred to the appropriate source for handling. Oftentimes, counties will receive complaints from citizens. As an elected board member, you want to be responsive to the citizens that elected you. But you should not get in the middle of individual complaints. Instead, you should really think of yourself as a shepherd. You should direct callers, for example, to the appropriate person who can handle the situation. In many instances, it may be the department head. You don't want to, again, interfere in these types of issues. As an example, you may get a call from a constituent saying, boy, I was just at the county park and there was really a rude county employee. Is it your job as the county supervisor to track down that employee? Absolutely not. Share that complaint with the administrator and let the administrator handle that based upon the personnel policies that were established by the county. Again, these last couple of slides are just really key points to remember. Counties are creatures of the state. We can only do what the statutes and the Constitution allow. You're a legislative body. You set policy, you approve budgets, you make cooperative decisions. County boards work most effectively when utilizing a strong committee system. County committees do much of the preliminary work prior to making recommendations to the full board. They monitor performance, review and develop budget recommendations, and draft ordinances and resolutions for the full board to consider. Individual county supervisors have no management or leadership role outside of county committees or commissions. County administration and department heads are to implement the policies and procedures of the board. Micromanaging stifles productivity of county operations, and the board and administrative teams should work cohesively and cooperatively, and that is what will provide you with the best chance of success in meeting the needs of county residents. All right, so that does end the presentation for today. If you have questions on this subject matter after the meeting, you can contact our office. You can contact Von Briesen and Roper. We also work closely with the UW Extension Local Government Center on training as well. So I'm going to turn it back over to you guys and see if you have any questions. And I know we covered an awful lot in the time we had allotted.
Go ahead, Vince. You started.
I think you did a great job, and I know we all appreciate it. And I don't see any hands going up for questions, so thank you, and I'll be sure we'll have them refer to you if they have questions later.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. Hopefully next time we can get together in person.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. We're back on. Well, one thing I noticed that she did say in her meeting was be okay to admit mistakes. I was told to ask for a motion to suspend the rules after a roll call today for seating. I didn't follow. Does that need to be still cleaned up for today? Would someone make a motion to suspend the rules for the seating arrangements tonight Supervisor O'Connell, you're the, you should have caught that, I would assume. Okay, so, talking a little bit about what we did, and then Malia, I'm sure, will follow up with what's in front of us.
Okay, I got this to work. The first thing we discussed was the two documents, and we had the draft, and we had the ordinance 4318. And by consensus, we decided to look at 4318 and start there because there was, when you put the two together, there's more that are the same in both. So we looked at the draft, and the things that weren't in 18, we compiled to put into 18. But there were a few changes in 18 that Malia will bring to our attention. They're just a few changes. They weren't off the bat, they were just from our committee.
Yes, go ahead, Malia. Yeah. Yeah, and I would say during the committee of the whole, if anyone wants to get up and go out and come back, I think this is a good time to do it so we don't have to take a break.
Why don't we start with the resolution, just because I think that's an easy low-hanging fruit. This one, yeah. I'm sorry.
This is Mike Richard. I'm confused. You mentioned resolution, and I don't think I have any resolution in front of me.
Supervisor Pritchard, it's not a resolution. It's the format for resolutions that I'm recommending going forward, so it would replace the Appendix A in the current Rules of Order. You won't be able to see it because you're by phone, so you'll just have to trust your colleagues.
I'd like to just mention that I received by email a copy of an ordinance that wasn't marked with any particular date or draft. I think that was about that was about 3 o'clock this afternoon. And it's a 15-page document, and that is what we're basically talking about here. Just as a point of the difficulty of going through a 15-page document that is not marked to show changes from the prior ordinance is a bit of an undertaking. But anyway, I think for the convenience and so on, if we're looking forward, that there would be a very good policy to get these documents out further in advance, and where there's a lengthy legal document that they're marked to show the changes from the document that's being changed. And that's just a comment, but I feel quite strongly about that, and it's a matter of, I think, good practice for our board and in general.
Can I comment on that?
Use your microphone. If you use your microphone, you can call it.
Go ahead, Jay. Put your microphone on.
Yeah. Actually, Supervisor, this is addressed to Supervisor Pritchard. I don't know where I got my information, but I had a copy a couple of weeks ago of a draft and the old ordinance and the new proposed ordinance here that you guys went over. And I had access to that some couple of weeks ago, and I looked it over, and there wasn't much of anything that was changed in the two documents. However, I think that's what the product that we're looking at today is a result of.
I would say that I think there were substantial changes.
Supervisor Pritchard?
Yeah.
You were the one that I believe made the motion last meeting to actually have, or maybe Russ did, but the board, asked a couple of supervisors and staff to work on this. So at this point, I'd like you to hold your comments and let Malia finish. Thanks.
Well, let me just follow up this.
Mr. Pritchard?
Just to see if I'm...
Supervisor Pritchard? Supervisor Pritchard?
Yes?
You've been asked to hold your comments. Corporation Counsel is doing a presentation.
I have a question that I would like...
You are out of order? You are out of order. You must hold your comments. Please begin, Malia.
Okay, so the document that is showing on the screen right now is a proposal that I have to change the format of our resolutions. If you can see, it lists the supervisors in order of their district. It makes for ease of the clerk when they're tallying roll call or ballot votes. It'll also inform the board as to whether or not a simple majority would be required to pass it or a supermajority, 2/3. And then it has at the bottom, could you scroll down a little bit, Fred? At the bottom here, which is where we would sign off on it from finance, corp counsel, and administrator, and we would put any fiscal or legal impacts right there on the front. So right now, the current form that you guys use has a lot of extra pages at the end for all of these signatures. This would just clean it up, and right on the face of it you would see who voted for it, who voted against it, did it pass, and what the legal and fiscal impact might be. So this is what I'm recommending. Down, lower, sorry. This is what I'm recommending going forward. I know that when I shared it with the county clerk, she was excited about it and really appreciated this. So this is the first recommendation. I don't know if you want to just kind of give me a consensus if you're comfortable with this.
Doug, I would like to say too, out of our committee that we were asked to look at it, what was the opinion of that group that we looked at about this format? Right. I just wanted to make sure you say that on your mic and let everyone know what we thought of it.
I thought the format was just fine.
Any other questions about this? Supervisor O'Connell?
Do we have, so who sponsors this? Is that going to be on there in a committee? Once it went through the committee, see that?
Well, whoever the sponsoring supervisor would sign off on it. If it's a full committee, we would modify the form so that it could be noted that the full committee is sponsoring it. We're not there yet, but we can certainly add that to this.
Malia, the clerk also has a question about this.
I think what we would do is we would have to draft an amendment rather than, containing. We would need to have somebody in here with the Word version of it, and if it did get amended, that would become the official version. That'd probably be the cleanest.
Okay, can we move on then? That's the recommendation. Well, that'll be part of what we're going to be voting on here after our committee of the whole.
So can we go to the 2020? Sorry.
Yep. Oh no, we can hand out copies. Do you guys want copies of, hard copies of this?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, we'll pass it out.
Word.
Mr. Chair, I should say, this is Mike Pritchard again, if I could be in order to just make a comment.
Are you just doing this because you said I took more time last meeting and now you want more time?
Actually, you were supposed to have stepped down and had the vice chair chair the meeting when you're engaging in the debate, I believe. I'm not sure of that, and I apologize if I offended you with it.
You're out of order again. I'm not going to take any questions from you right now.
Just to be clear, the stepping down of the chair during committee of the whole does not apply because the general rules do not apply. It's more of a conversation that's supposed to happen during committee of the whole. So just to clarify that.
And so you understand this, we're handing out a
Except
copy.
when I want to speak. So
You don't have your chance.
I'm out of order if I want to speak.
You are out of order, but we will, at least tell you what we're handing out here if you can't see it. And, we just handed out this, copy of what the proposed format will look like for introducing resolutions. That's all we're handing out. It's just a proposed new format to make it easier.
I just wanted to say I had not seen that yet.
That's okay.
Okay, so,
We'll email it to you right now.
at the sorry.
So, the clerk is going to email it to Supervisor Pritchard right now.
Wonderful, thank you. At the request, I believe, of Supervisor Pritchard, and I think the consensus of the group of us that met, we went back to the old format and version and simply updated it. I understand that it would be really nice to have a red-lined version so you can clearly see the differences. The only access I had to the old version was a PDF, and trying to convert that to Word did not work. So I had to retype it out. So we didn't have the opportunity, rather than retyping out the old one and then putting in my changes, I just retyped it, the way it is with the changes. So that's why we are where we are as far as what you're looking at. So some of the changes we talked about at the the original organizational meeting. And so the purpose, that remains the same as the old one. Article 2, meetings, the only real changes that I made in here, a lot of it relates to that COVID-19 situation. So it gives us flexibility. It allows for the meeting to happen like it is right now, by Webex without having to suspend the rules. It also, I don't know if you want to scroll a little. It also clarifies how meetings can be scheduled and called. The current rules of order are a bit ambiguous, and that's why I think we had a lot of questions from the public as far as the emergency meeting that happened on Friday. The chairperson called it, and people were wondering where that exists. And so this clears up that type of thing, and it puts in the hands of the chair, working with the administrator, to make those decisions. So it just really makes it 100% clear so there's no question. We still have the statutory authority for the board to have a majority of supervisors request a special meeting even if the chairman refuses to call it. So there still is that way if you ask for a meeting and one isn't given to you. We're also changing, or we put in here as a change, the seating arrangement. So during our meeting when we were discussing this, there was a desire to kind of mix things up as far as where people sit. The current rules of order have you sitting in order of your districts. And that's fine, but you're always in the same spot. You're always hearing the same person mumble under their breath if you happen to sit next to them. And you start kind of seeing, maybe groups that vote together. By mixing it up, it's going to force others to A, get to know each other, and B, maybe not have that, where you get so used to the people that you're sitting around and having those little side conversations. So, what we were contemplating is that the clerk before the meeting would have you draw a number and it would decide which seat you're going to sit on. So, you can leave it the way it is currently in your current rules of order, and you can change that if you decide later, but that was a recommendation that we had. So let's go to the next page. So, lower? Am I really loud? Is that my problem? I'm sorry. So, the public comment. One of the things that was discussed in our meeting is whether or not to have public comment at the county board. A lot of counties say that public comment really should come at the committee level. That's where the gathering of public input. By the time something bubbles up to the full county board, it should have been vetted at the committee level. So that's certainly an option if you wanted to
get rid of public comment. There's nothing that requires you to have it at the county board level. I personally would recommend at least having the option of having public comment at county board, and the way we put it in here, again, in response to COVID-19, it generally is allowed, but it may be avoided in cases of emergency or where it's very impractical to have public comment. So that was, again, just in response to the COVID-19.
No, Masters, we're going to let Malia finish before we take any comments.
Okay, let's go down a little further. The ordinances and resolutions. Now, this is where we made significant recommended changes. Under your current rules of order, there's some confusion as to how resolutions and other legislative actions start. And what we've seen is that resolutions are drafted because somebody has an idea, and then changed later because once the idea is talked about either at board or committee, we realize, well, this isn't the right wording for this resolution, or we need to look at it from a different angle. So what we are recommending is that a lot of your resolutions will come from staff because they're ordinary and routine, and they'll just bring them forward to you. Or the county administrator, if he believes that something is important, can have a resolution drafted and placed before the county board. The county board chair can also recommend legislation be drafted so that it can come to the full board. But what happens when a supervisor wants a topic discussed and a potential resolution, and they go to the administrator or the chair and they go, well, no, we're not going to be asking that get drafted. And there should be a way, right, to have that conversation. So we added two options in those circumstances. The topic that supervisor would like to explore as far as potential resolutions can either be placed on the committee of the whole at county board, and then if the county board has a consensus during that committee of the whole seems to think, yeah, we would like to see that legislation, then our office will draft that legislation. Or the supervisor can have the same topic placed on the appropriate committee's agenda. And if the committee decides that they want to pursue that drafting of that legislation, then our office would also draft. This will prevent supervisors who don't want to go to the chair, don't want to go to the administrator, or maybe they did and they didn't get very far, from then calling me and then saying, hey, but don't tell the administrator, right? I want you to draft this for me. It makes it clear the lines of what my office will do. So if the committee of the whole says, yeah, draft it, I'll do it. If any subcommittee of the county board says draft it, I'll do it. If the administrator says draft it, I'll do it, or if the chair. So those are the four ways. So that's the main difference from how things are currently. So we could go on. A lot of this is the same and mirrors completely your current rules of order. So we don't really need to go over that unless you would like. If you read through it, no? Okay. All of the debate that is listed here remains exactly the same. And remember, anytime if the rules of order don't address something, then you look to Robert's Rules of Order as a backup. So this is your primary document, and if something comes up and it wasn't addressed clearly in the rules, then you look to Robert's Rules of Order. The Rules of Order also say that it is the chairperson who decides. So somebody raises their hand and says point of order because they think something isn't happening that should happen, or something that shouldn't happen is happening. And then it's up to the chair to rule. The chair is supposed to consult with me and I'll provide advice, but ultimately it's the chair's determination whether to sustain that objection or not. However, the full county board, if they so desire, could override the chairman's decision. But that's how generally issues of points of order are addressed. Voting is the same. as it currently exists in the current rules of order, so there's no changes there. I added removal of chairman and vice chair. And currently your current rules of order are silent on whether a chairperson or vice chairperson could be removed. This makes it clear that you would have to have a full 2/3 of the county board. So 10 members, not just 2/3 of the members present, so not just 2/3 of a quorum, but actually 10 members. If 10 members say, hey, we no longer have confidence in one of those officers, they can ask that that be placed on the subsequent county board agenda, so it wouldn't be voted on when they ask for it. It would be voted on at the following meeting, so that the chairperson or vice chair would have an opportunity to, explain, defend, that kind of thing. So the duties of county board chairperson, this has changed because he will no longer be the chair of the executive, but he's still on the executive. Also, there are some questions, I think, about what happens when the chairperson becomes an ex officio member of a committee. So if there is a situation where there is a lack of a quorum, that something is needed to be done at a committee level, then the chairperson could sit on that committee to create that quorum. In addition to that, the chairperson could sit on the committee if he wanted to as a non-voting member, even if he's not needed for a quorum. We can continue. Standing committee system, we left it generally the same, and I think this is maybe where you might want to have some discussion, because we're talking about making our committee system more responsive to the divisional form of government. So there might be some discussion as to where you guys want certain things to go and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, we left things basically the same. Do you guys remember the specifics that we talked about as far as the differences where we wanted? I think the question about UW extension, and should that still go to the Environmental Services Committee? And the answer to that is yes, because statutorily, the Agricultural Committee has to oversee the agricultural part of UW extension. But UW extension in and of itself is not a county department, so it doesn't need to report in general to any committee. We also have the CJCC, which is really housed in the Department of Administration, but based upon the type of work it does, we're asking that they report generally to Public Works and Public Safety. And you notice I changed it from Public Safety and Highway, so it'll still be the Highway Department, but because we're trying to model that divisional form, so that's why we call it Public Works and Public Safety. And I think those are the main and really only substantive changes that were made from the current rules of order. So it's in the same format as the old one. So if you did want to set one right next to the other one, the old and the new, it will become very clear what the differences are. Do you have any questions?
So, Chairman Masters, you had...
Oh, yeah, on the public comment, then,
can you use your mic, please?
I'm sorry.
Maybe the battery died?
Thank you. There we go.
In terms of the public comment, you explained a little bit about that, whether we should have or not, and what's the deciding factor in that, and how should we focus on our rules, I guess.
So again, I recommend that you have the option of having public comment at any meeting, especially in those circumstances where maybe something is an emergent situation and it hasn't gone to committee, so the committees wouldn't have had the opportunity to have public comment received at that level, and so maybe the only place where the public can let the supervisors know their feelings. So the way it's currently written, in this draft, would allow for public comment, but it would not require it.
Okay. Now, I agree with the portion that it should be done at the committee level. For the most part, during public comments, it should be directed at the committee that's handling that issue or resolution or so-called ordinance. I guess that's what maybe it's a good question, Doug. I wasn't there at that meeting, of course. Was there any discussion on how to handle that? Or how we should approach that? I guess, is it in there?
Yep. Do you want to
Yeah, it's in there.
scroll
It
back
wasn't
up to
taken
the
out.
public
It's a comment
comment?
that someone asked, are we required to have public comment?
To the other direction.
Left in there. Okay. John?
I would, I talked to a lot of people about that, and our committees all meet in the daytime, and we have a working public in the daytime, and I think it served very well to limit the total public comments to 30 minutes and 3 minutes to a person. I haven't.
Keep it the way it is I think the consensus.
Yeah, that's been by far the consensus of the people that I talked to.
Kim?
I have one other comment as long as I have this. On your, something that is new, two-thirds of the majority or 10 people to, remove a chair. There's 5 people on the committee. We have 5 committees, and there's been instances, I'm talking with some experience now, there's been instances where somebody would start something about a chair that wasn't true or different things like that. And I think that's much more fair, and I talked to some other people in other counties, and that seems to be 3/4 to remove a chair. I think 3/4 is more realistic, more honest. I would like to see that from, I know that was your perspective and it's flexible. I would like to see that from 10 to 12, which would be 3/4 of.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah.
Here you go, Jay. Just hold it up.
This one works.
All right.
Yeah, figuring that by that number, what are we going to do? Would that be 11 or 11 12? 12 people? Yeah. Or would it be 11? So about 15, I think. That'd be my calculate, but. Well, the calculation is 11 3/4, or 11 1/4. Yeah, so that would make it 12. To push it to the
11 would be 11.
would make it 11. If it's a quarter. Well, I think you have to do it by number. If you want to increase the number from 10 to 11, and I'd be fine with that. Something like that would be, yeah, I'd be fine with 11. Because we split that one and 11. And then go to just 2 out of 5 committees. It's fairly easy for somebody to start something and get that kind of settlement, and it's happened.
And whether you set it as a number, remember the chair, of course, would not likely be voting.
Correct.
Unless you want it out, so I suppose
I'm going to put it past the chair. Kim, you had a question.
My question is, we didn't go through any of the duties, responsibilities. They all stay pretty much the same.
Stay pretty much the same. The executive committee has the added responsibility of settling disputes between committees when they're battling over which committee should be the primary point on a particular issue. So we did add that to the executive committee, and the CJCC reporting to public safety, public works. Other than that, they remain the same.
I'm not sure if we're at the point where this is a good time to bring it up or maybe later, but I would like to see a standard agenda item either right prior to or right after the approval of the agenda of disclosure of potential conflicts of interest by members regarding any item on the agenda. That is a fairly standard practice in governmental entities, and I think that it would reflect positively on the board, that we are making an effort that all of us maintain and display ethical behavior. And it just looks good. It's a good thing for the public to create confidence in us as a board.
Sure. Brian, you have a question? Thank you. Anyone else? Doug?
Okay. Can we go back to resolutions?
Sure.
And scroll down
You
there?
want to scroll down? There you go, Article 3.
And it's not clear on what we talked about in the committee.
Go ahead. Go on in what.
If we,
So if you go back up a little, Chad. So if you look at A.
yeah, right there, that's all.
Supervisors can go to the chairperson of the board, and the chairperson can direct my office to draft. Right?
Okay, go ahead.
That's one way. Supervisor can go to the administrator, and the administrator agrees. And then we go down to that's number 2. Supervisor asks for the topic of legislation placed on a committee agenda. And if that committee tells me to draft, I'll draft. Or, committee of the whole, county board, and the county board can tell me to draft. Those are the 4 ways.
If we scroll back to the other 2, and we look at line 37 through 40.
37 through 40, okay?
But it's actually 39 and 40 that I'm trying to discuss.
At the bottom, bottom of page 2.
So a supervisor may agree, seek the agreement, but at the bottom it says the appropriate committee's agenda for consideration after introduction at county board. So it was my understanding from the chair that this resolution would go to the full county board to be discussed in the committee of the whole, then it goes to committee. Did I get that wrong? I thought that's the way we discussed it.
And that's exactly what that reads.
Yeah. I thought so.
Okay.
So the way it's written is the way we discussed that. That's the new process, right? So why don't you, Doug, walk us through, in your way of thinking it, walk us through exactly how A would work for someone that wants to bring a resolution.
Well, I'm just going with my understanding of what we discussed. Is that a supervisor would seek agreement on this resolution, then he takes it, then it goes to corporate counsel, then it is brought to the full board under committee of the whole and discussed so that everybody knows what this resolution is working on. Then it goes to committee after that. Then it comes back to the full board for a decision.
Yeah, we talked about a couple ways, and if I could just fill in, I'd ask also maybe that you would have actually agenda item that says county board supervisor, you want to introduce a resolution, to bring it up. So let's say we don't have a committee of the whole meeting on the agenda, but we work through this resolution that on every agenda, there'd be a spot on the agenda that opportunity would be there for any supervisors to, so let's say we're having a meeting tonight, we hit that agenda item, no committee of the whole, that supervisor could say, I have a resolution that I'm going to bring to environmental services. And it gives the supervisor an opportunity to talk about his resolution that he's taken to that committee. So other supervisors understand what the intent of the resolution is, why they want to do it. Supervisor Pritchard and I both had a lot in common about that issue. It's like you never knew there was a resolution coming here until it just showed up. We got our information late. But if we knew that something was going on and we kind of understood what it was, maybe we'd go to the committee, right? I think that was the idea. Or you read the agenda and you just have to show up and sit there and listen to it. And I think that was why we discussed how do supervisors get to introduce a resolution, right, that we all understand is coming and it's going to be at a committee. I don't know if I'm saying that the way we thought it. Why don't you finish?
Well, I I understand what you're saying, because I think that was mentioned too. But the way this is written, we need to probably clarify that if a supervisor has a resolution that he'd like to present, then we can present it at the full board in the committee of the whole, but that should be if that's our intent, it should be a required thing.
I just know, but I think there's supervisors that don't really want us to have committee of the whole, because that's a standard thing where we have this group for all discussion.
But you could put it under your agenda item, like you said.
Sure.
But,
the reason why we have to have some guidance to a format to the administrator is it's very clearly stated that we are, as a board, are only policy makers. And so, like, anybody that was in town government operates under home rule. And everything in county government is dictated by the legislature. And so we just went through everything, what's policy and what's the administrative responsibility. Any of us that was in town government, that's hard to understand. So that's why it has to go to the administrator or somebody, because as just supervisors, we don't always know if we got the proper authority. What we're doing as policy and what he's doing as his obligations. So it has to go to somebody to make sure we're on the right track. Thank you.
Jim?
But this is just one of the 4 ways to bring it forward.
Sure.
You can still bring it to a committee.
Right.
First or whatever.
But it wouldn't be drafted then, it would be the topic, like I want a resolution regarding, right, exactly.
Right, so if a supervisor wanted to talk about cutting grass, let's just say, for example, someone has that on their mind. That supervisor wants to bring that issue up, they're gonna have to go to the committee first and see if they think it's a good idea, because the administrator and the chair has already said, we're out. But if he gets his committee to say, hey, great idea, let's get it drafted. And if that doesn't work, he can still try to convince the chair or the administrator to put it on the committee of the whole agenda, right? Does it have to be listed on the committee of the whole, that this agenda, or is it just going to be?
The top, because you won't be taking any formal action on it other than telling somebody to draft something, I mean, you could have that, right. So
the resolution's not going to be there. They're just, him or her are just going to have to say, hey, this is an idea, I want to talk about cutting grass.
Right, but if they wanted to give folks a heads up that they were going to talk about it, they certainly could make sure it's on the agenda.
Sure. Supervisor Olson, do you have a comment?
Would there be any discussion at the full county board, or would it just be, here's my idea and which committee is it going to, or is the county board going to discuss it before it gets to committee in theory?
You're talking about when there isn't a resolution drafted, but you're wanting one drafted, right?
Yes.
Whether it goes to committee or to the county board, I would seek direction, so there would have to be some type of discussion and consensus before I would draft.
Richard again on this issue, if I can make a comment or ask a question.
Hey, Mike, what I'd like you to do, just because you're on the phone and it's difficult to understand you when you jump in and jump out, if you just ask, everyone else is raising their hand when it's their turn, could you raise your hand or say, yeah, I'd like to talk, so at least we know you're waiting in the wings to bring something up and just jumping in and talking. You can ask, Mr. Chair, I'd like to discuss something, and then let me recognize you, because it's just, you're just jumping in, and it's difficult for us to listen to that.
Yeah, I was doing it when I thought there was a pause, but maybe not.
Yeah, so I recognize you. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, on this, and I've got some other points on this draft, but on this point, I had the question, and I think it's germane to this. I still wasn't clear if, let's say, one supervisor or 2 or 3 supervisors had a matter that they wanted to present in the form of a resolution. If I read this, I think as it's written, it says you have to have either the agreement of the chairperson, the agreement of the administrator, the agreement of a committee chairman, or you have to present the general topic for a discussion at a board meeting, presumably at a committee of the whole, as subparagraph D would say. And I'm wondering if is there any way that a supervisor can introduce a resolution other than those four ways? And in each case, I just heard Malia saying having a consensus of the board after a committee of the whole discussion, that it would be very difficult to get something before the board. Maybe that's the purpose of this, but I think it should be a more open matter for a supervisor or a small group of supervisors to present a proposal.
Thanks for your comments, Mike.
I'll just add one other thing, that there's at each of those subparagraphs it says after it's drafted by corporation counsel, it'd be put on the appropriate committee's agenda, and that's a little ambiguous, because up above that it says that the chairperson and the administrator will determine the board agenda, and I think the committee chairs determine their agenda. So you've probably got that issue out there as to which committee is it going to and who decides.
I can answer that. If you look at the current draft says after introduction at county board, so it would be the full county board that refers the resolution to a committee. And then if another committee said, no, I think that should come to our committee, that's when the executive committee would step in.
Well, the first question, though, was the one of
Mike?
Yeah.
You can't just jump in, please. So I'm going to recognize you right now. You've had two questions. We're going to go on to if anyone else has any.
One of them didn't get answered, but anyway.
Well, you can make a motion when we go back in, and if you want to do something, we'll do it. So this is a discussion of the rules of order. Are we ready to go to B? Go ahead, Doug.
Could we talk about the executive committee? Because we had quite a discussion on that in our committee.
That be under B again? On our agenda?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's also on here, so I can
Go ahead,
yeah.
Well, I thought it's on there because some of it showed up in the draft.
Sure.
Just you wanted a team building and having the committee chairs on that committee.
Yeah. So what we discussed in that rules committee is that the executive committee goal would be that we have the chair of each or a designee, but every committee would have a person that would be on the executive team. So that was the idea of that. Each committee would have a member on the executive committee. That was the goal. Right? How do we word that out?
We put it as, I think we use the word practicable or something.
Sure.
Should be diverse amongst the committees. You could have a circumstance since the chair, the vice chair, and the second vice chair, they might not represent all of the different committees depending upon how that shakes out. So I think the goal is to have as much diversity and representation of the committees as possible on the executive.
But we didn't define it as it has to be, but that is the goal of the executive committee, that it's got a broad group of people from every committee on that executive team. Correct. Fran?
I just got a question, if I understand it correctly. So the executive committee and the executive team are two separate things, or the
Same thing.
but it's not getting renamed?
No.
Okay.
All right. Is there any other comments here about the rules of order? You can certainly, yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Pritzker.
Mike again. One just technical thing. I think on the the Environmental Services Committee and the General Government Committee under committee contact. The county museum was under both of them. Was that intentional?
I don't think so. That's an oversight.
It's right now, Supervisor Masters.
It's under environmental services. Is that the correct place for it supposed to be?
If that's where you want it.
So we're going to get to make motions if you want to do it later. So, are we done with this part of committee of the whole? Do we have a motion to adjourn? Fran first. Supervisor Wandall second. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign.
Aye.
Sure, let's take a break. We're going to take a break. We're not going to have to motion and do that, do we? Are we legally required to? Okay. It's the chair's prerogative that Supervisor Masters needs a break. We're going to take a 10-minute break and be back at 8:10.
I know. The one up there is not the one in their pack. That's why everybody's more. Open that window. That was different than that. Anything close. Well, we got the right one.
So we are, do we need a motion to reconvene? No, no, we got through 7. We're out of, committee of the whole. Reconvene the county board, we're on 9. Continue organizational matters, to the board term. A, develop and adopt revisions to the Polk County Board of Supervisor Rules of Order. So I need a motion for that. We need a motion for that. Motion by Supervisor Master, second by Supervisor Luke. Open for discussion and amendments. Fran?
Does that include my requested amendment regarding the standard agenda item?
You can make right now. You can make a motion.
I would like to amend the motion to reflect the addition of a standard agenda item placed either number 5, probably on the agenda, disclosure of potential conflicts of interest by members regarding any item on the agenda.
Is there a second for that? Supervisor Arcan second it. Open for discussion. Are you talking about the agenda or the rules of order? I don't follow here. Yeah, we're in the rules of order. Okay. She would like to add that. Looking at her agenda to the rules of order. Okay. Malia, do you have a comment about that? I'm going to ask Malia on any of these changes to rules of order to comment on them once there's been a motion and a second, just so we understand before we debate it. What are we actually dealing with?
Sure. So the ethical obligations for a county board supervisor when it comes to conflicts of interest is codified in Chapter 19 of the Wisconsin statute, so it would be required for anyone that has a conflict to raise it and to ask the chair for permission to abstain from voting on that topic. So adding the agenda item wouldn't change what the current obligation is, but it would certainly at least every time have supervisors think about whether or not they may or may not have a conflict in any particular situation. Now, conflicts are statutorily defined. So some things that you might perceive as a potential conflict would not rise to the level of a conflict. And other times, it might be something you didn't think of that is actually a conflict. So you're always welcome, if you think you may have a conflict, to come to me ahead of time and ask that question, and we can have that conversation.
Okay, so Supervisor O'Connell?
Should we put that on the committee ones also then? Agendas? Would it apply to all of them then? Would be a statement on each one?
I guess we should ask, was that your intent, Supervisor? That you would want that on every agenda? You're saying it for the county board and all committees, right?
It's my understanding that the way the committees function is that they make recommendations to the county board. Is that correct? If they are if they're making a recommendation to the board, at the board level, to me personally would be sufficient to disclose a conflict of interest. But as committee members, you may want to know that as things are under discussion. I certainly would have no problem with that. So I'm flexible either direction in that, but I certainly can amend my motion to reflect that that includes committee meetings as well.
Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hold on, Supervisor Booth.
Hi, Jeff. For sure. Holy cow. Amazing item. I wonder if we could add, if you might consider that the conflict would be depicted by the statutory definition.
Could you comment on that, Corporation Counsel?
Supervisor Luke, do you mean that we should, within the rules of order, simply state that all supervisors are to comply with their statutory obligations regarding conflicts and just leave it at that?
Reasoning being that it would be more uniform with the actual conflict of interest that we're already under with the county membership.
Supervisor Bonnerprice?
I can't imagine anything in my experience of government where somebody hasn't voluntarily stepped down if there seemed to be something that was a conflict. The only thing I could think of is we've had several trail issues. Well, I don't happen to have a snowmobile, an ATV, or a horse, but so we had a trail issue and I had one of those entities. Would that be a conflict of interest? I can't imagine a scenario other than what we've adhered to in the past.
I can give an example of a conflict of interest. So let's say a supervisor is married to a county employee, and that supervisor is voting to increase salaries, for example. That supervisor would need to refrain from voting.
And I think they always have.
Right. So the conflict of interest is truly a conflict, not just you may have, you might enjoy the trail more if something passes. That would not be a conflict.
That's happened on, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
My green light was still on. I got that mixed. That happened on our Board of Health when we had personnel that had and they've automatically stepped down and requested that. So I think we've always honored that, but if it's not in the rules, maybe it's right to cover it. I thought it was in our rules.
Supervisor Masters?
So I guess what you're saying is, Malia, that it isn't in the rules of order, but it's an understood message that if you have conflict of interest in a certain matter, that you abstain from it. I think we always have. So I guess that my question is, it's not in the rules of order, but it's already assumed that we abstain from any conflict.
It's a statutory requirement.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, again, I guess I don't think we need to put in the rules of order. It's already statutory requirement. Thank you.
Supervisor Duncanson?
Yes, like I said, I don't know why anybody, I understand it may be viewed as it's not necessary because it's a statutory thing, but the public may not know that. And I like to think that, something else to think about is perception and pass on the strength test, which is, it looks good, it increases the public's confidence in us, and what we're all of us who said it really well, we know that in the past it's been great and everybody has always really abided by that. But we may not have the same people on this board forever. And me being a new board member, I haven't had an orientation type of thing in ways where these types of things are explained to me or where I've been made aware of it. I am aware of it just because of my profession, but, I just think it's a good way to increase public confidence in what we do here.
So I appreciate that. Malia, could you explain to new supervisors and even us that have been here and some of you guys that have been here a long time, what's the process currently right now? Obviously some people come to you for conflict of interest questions. How would you tell us how do we handle that today?
So if somebody did have a conflict of interest or questioned whether they did, they would come to me or Mr. Loso from my office. We would render a legal opinion as to whether or not it rises to the statutory requirements under Chapter 19. If they did, then that supervisor would disclose the conflict of interest. They would ask the chair of the committee or the board to be allowed to abstain, to have permission to abstain from the vote.
Sure. So Corporation Counsel, Supervisor Luke.
I pushed the right button. Maria and I had an actual conflict of interest incident in the committee, a public protection committee years ago when they were hearing a complaint by a personnel complaint, and one of the complainants that was actually ultimately suing the county was a individual that I watched grow up next door almost with my son, almost living in my house. I definitely recused myself then from that because of the conflict. That was an example that did actually happen, but it never had to be ruled upon. It was just something that was, obvious.
Supervisor Rowley?
Yes, I would just like to say that I agreed with Supervisor Duncanson's last comments that what does it hurt? Why not have it on our agenda?
So, Malia, here's the thing is the rules of order are one thing. I guess I'm going to ask the administrator in the Corporation Counsel to weigh in on this. Are we getting any gray area that we're going to be having debates during public meetings about issues about confidentiality, about conflicts of interest that might muddy the waters at all? Do you have any concerns that there'll be debates now on a conflict of interest that you're going to have to weigh in on during a meeting that should have been done prior to the meeting? That's just a question I have as organizational. I'm just thinking we're going to have this on our agenda versus in the rules of order. It's one thing to have it in our rules of order and state the statutes and be very clear with everyone the process, but to have it on the agenda on every committee that we're going to have to talk about conflict of interest on every single meeting. Do you have concerns with that?
I don't think it would arise any more than it currently has without it in the rules of order. The circumstances by which a conflict may arise are going to be relatively limited. It might be increased for, certain board members who hold positions where something you vote on here will affect what you do at your job every day. So there might be some who have more potential for conflicts, but I don't think I'm not concerned about any confidentiality issues.
If the chair may make a comment, I recused myself a couple times during the course of Board of Adjustment appointments because I work in construction. Some of my clients go to the Board of Adjustment, so I never voted on Board of Adjustment appointees over the last 4 years, but I know that's where I've recused myself. Supervisor Masters?
I believe this is a little ambiguous, basically because it is statutorily required, and I don't believe that we need to put that at every agenda and every committee meeting or board meeting.
Okay. Anyone else have comments about this right now? So we have a first and a second. We've discussed it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Zaney.
Yes.
Hi.
Supervisor Middleton, go ahead and speak to this.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to sort of second, I think, what Fran talked about, sort of the optics of it. I think that would look good in the public forum. And if we do get into a situation where we end up at the agenda, I think probably the agenda it'll just tick by each time. It'll just be ding, 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 no problem, no problem. I think if we did have a moment where it came up, that meant that there wasn't time or process before that where they had a chance to talk to corp counsel. So if it does come up, then it's an important thing to have come up, I think. And otherwise, I think it's going to just be an agenda item that we whip through.
So call the question is non-debatable, correct? Or is that the chair's?
It is debatable.
It's non-debatable as long as anyone who has wanted to speak to it has had the opportunity. So if there's a supervisor that has not yet spoken to it that wishes to speak.
Supervisor Pritchard, we haven't heard from you. Do you want to speak to this matter?
Well, as long as you're asking, I see no problem in approving it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the question's been called. So help me work through this. So we have a motion and a second to amend the rules of order to add the conflict of interest to the county board agenda.
Is that correct? Is that the motion? Can you read that backwards? Was that the motion that was, you understand?
Amend the rules of order. Amend the rules of order to add a statement of disclosure of potential conflict of interest as a standing agenda item to call committee and board meeting.
Is that the motion? Okay. So we're going to call the vote on that. All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Any other discussion on the rules of order?
For the order, I don't think that would be.
I don't recognize your point of order. Supervisor Arcan?
So I'd make a motion that we include all of the amended items that we instructed the committee to go through.
We have a second by Supervisor Luke.
Say your motion again, Supervisor Arcan.
The motion was to include all of the amended items that the committee developed for us.
The Rules Committee that we set up, right? And Jay seconded that motion. And now there'll be discussion. Supervisor Masters.
My mic's stopped working, I'm sorry. I don't know why. Just that, do we have the order to make any other amendments to the order? Closing the deal.
This is not closing the deal. Supervisor Boniface?
I don't know what the proper time is now or amend it if it needs an amendment. But I want to make a motion to where that majority would be to 11 instead to remove a town chair.
what,
I think it's not an even number, it's an odd number, and I think it should go by an odd number.
And I think you first have to, I apologize,
Yeah,
I think you first have to vote on the original motion, and then once that passes, then
So make an amendment?
yeah.
Thank you, Council.
So on the floor is the amendment by Supervisor Arcan to pass the rules that were proposed by the Rule Committee. I don't see any other discussion on that. All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried. Supervisor Bonaprise, you want to make a...
Now I want to make an amendment in the rules of order to remove the chair or the vice chair. I'm going to put it's a little less than 3/4, a little more than...
Sure.
It's an odd number.
So that's your motion to have a specific number than 2/3 to say 11.
Correct.
Do we have a second on that? Supervisor LeBlanc, second. Any discussion on that?
The reason why I'm saying this is, some of these supervisors are new to the county, and in my experience, I remember when through a lot of false statements, press and everything, where our administrator, our human service director, our highway commissioner, they were all fired, and the compensation, I know I can say for a fact, was over $1 million. So I think this merits why I'm saying that.
Supervisor Masters, you had your hand up. Do you have any discussion about that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Council, is there a limit of the number, 2/3, 3/4? I mean, you came up with a number of 10. I'm not sure what Mr. Boniface's number 11 is all in favor of, but I believe, I'm asking Corporation Council the question. Thank you.
So I came up with 10 because that is 2/3 of the entirety of the board.
Mm-hmm.
But this board is well within its rights to set whatever threshold it deems appropriate.
And that's just my question. Thank you.
Any other further discussion on that amendment? We had a first and a second. We'll call the vote. All in favor by Supervisor Bonaprise amendment by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Carried. Supervisor Masters, do you have an amendment?
I do have a couple amendments, Mr. Chairman.
Let's do one at a time.
I'm getting onto it here. All right. Again, the Environmental Services Committee has contact committees, and we see that there's a number of them. And I believe Mr. Pritchard was mentioning something about this, but under the Environmental Services Committee is Polk County Economic Development Corporation, EDC, Polk County Museum, and the Polk County Tourism Council. I believe that the Environmental Services Committee has enough on their agenda, and I would recommend that we move those 3 things to the General Government Committee, because we only have 3 things of outside organizations and agencies.
So that's a motion to move.
That is a motion.
Can you be specific again on what? I'll say it a little slower,
okay,
so the clerk can write this down.
The Polk County EDC, Polk County Museum, and the Polk County Tourism Council be moved to the general government, outside agencies and organizations.
Okay, so you have a second on that? So Doug seconds that, Supervisor Rowdy seconds. Discussion, Supervisor O'Connell?
I mean, do you have a new one? I think it's already been changed, so Russ would have covered it.
It's already on there.
It's on page 11. I think it's already been changed. And with Russ's amendment.
Here, and it's still on yours, but maybe I have it wrong.
Of the new ones, I think it's already been changed. You have federal government has 9 things.
Oh.
Yeah.
Supervisor Masters?
So I think it was already done with Russ. Yeah, because Russ has already covered that.
Okay.
Pritchard here,
Supervisor Pritchard, I'll say again, please, if you would ask to be recognized, I'll let you talk, but just don't start talking. Oh, let's try it. Let's just try it once, Supervisor Pritchard. Try asking me once and let me see if I can hear you.
I can make a comment?
No, you first have to ask. Mr. Chairman?
Can I make a comment?
Can I, Chair, the proper way would be, Chair, may I please make a comment?
I said, Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes, you can.
In the draft that I have, Polk County Museum was one that appeared in both under Environmental Services and under General Government Committee, and I think the motion would be
Excuse me, Mr. Pritchard, the motion has already been made and there's a second. So we're talking to the specific motion. It's been already changed in this draft. He does have a point though, Mr. Chairman. He does have a point. There is Scribner's error. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Thank you. We're going to fix that. Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Pritchard. Okay. So that's already been done. So Supervisor Master,
I would like to withdraw my motion then.
It's already been done. Would the second need to withdraw theirs too? No? Okay. So that motion's been withdrawn. Thank you. Supervisor Master, you said you had another one? I don't.
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion?
You certainly can, Supervisor Pritchard. Thank you for asking.
On this point, the way it sits now, Polk County Museum is under two committees. And I would move that Polk County Museum also be moved to General Government Committee.
That, Supervisor Pritchard, that was already done. It was a Scribner's error. That's taken care of already.
Okay.
Do you have any motions?
I do.
Okay, well, you can make it now then if you have a motion.
I'm referring to page 2, and on each of 2A and B on page 2 and C and D on page 3, that end of, it would be lines 39, 44, and line 4 and line 9 on page 3, I would delete the last line, starting on line 39 as corporate counsel shall, delete after that, and I would insert deliver copies of the resolution to the county clerk and to the requesting supervisor.
So I'm going to just ask Corporation Counsel on this motion before we do it so we really understand what you're asking for. Do you understand what Supervisor Pritchard's motion is, Moya?
Well, that is the mechanism by which I would place them on the agendas, would be by delivering them to the county clerk. So I mean, I don't think that changes anything. And of course, after it's drafted, it would be returned to the supervisor that is sponsoring it so that they could review it to make sure I captured their original intent. So, I mean, you can do that, but it won't change how we operate.
Okay, so Supervisor Pritchard, now you guys understand what his motion was. Is there a second? Okay, that motion fails for the lack of a second. Is there any other amendments? Supervisor O'Connell.
I have another one.
No.
I made, Mr. Chair.
No, Supervisor O'Connell's next.
I would like on our resolutions, so that we have the committee it came from and the vote on that also, and if they recommend or don't recommend.
Oh, on the format?
In our format, so that when the resolution comes, we know if it's gone through or not. Yeah, and you said you could probably add that to the bottom.
So this is what Supervisor O'Connell is referring to, it's the format sheet.
So we would add a space on there that said, you know, Committee A recommended, did not recommend, or, is pushing through with no recommendations, just kind of like a check mark for the committee. Yeah.
Then we would know it went through a committee, otherwise we'd have to ask every time.
And I don't think, as long as everyone is comfortable with that, because this is an appendix to the rules of order, I don't think we need a motion or anything. I can just go ahead and make that change. So, yeah.
Do you think Corporation Counsel that maybe you could explain to the board that since this is a brand new system that we may be making recommendations could come from committees to kind of fine tune this as we do it a couple months?
Right. I think it should be a working document that we can change if it's working great, if we say, hey, we'd like to see this. Those are changes we should be able to make as a matter of course as we're going through rather than having a 2/3 vote to change the rules of order. So that's the way I would like to leave it. And I think because it's an appendix, that's the way it should be done.
Okay, Supervisor Masters?
Yep, I agree with what Malia said, but I'm just wondering if there's enough room in that side there. You got that little box for...
We'll let her figure that out.
Yeah.
Hey, Supervisor Pritchard, I'm back to you. You said you had another motion or amendment?
Let's see, my other one was on page, I'm sorry. I lost it now. Page 3. Just a minute. Page 3. I'm not sure how we left that discussion earlier on a supervisor being able to introduce.
Supervisor Pritchard, to make a motion, we're not in discussion. If you have a motion, please make it.
Page 3, I would add paragraph 2E. It says, any 3 supervisors may propose a resolution that, after review and approval as to form by corporate counsel, shall be placed on an agenda of a standing committee for consideration.
Okay, so that motion, let's be clear again, I'm going to have Corporation Counsel try to tell us. Okay, well, is there a second? Do we have a second for that amendment? For discussion, Supervisor O'Connell second that. Leah, could you now weigh in on what that motion means to everything?
So what I understood Supervisor Pritchard to say would be that any 3 supervisors, it would be a 5th way to have my office draft, and it would be 3 supervisors coming to me. I would have concerns depending upon whether those 3 supervisors were on the same committee because of open meetings law issues, so they would be getting together to talk about it, so I'm uncomfortable with that. That certainly if 3 separate supervisors came to the chair or the administrator to request a similar resolution, it would certainly inform the chair and the administrator of the interest in that and probably would increase the likelihood that they requested my office to draft.
Supervisor Pritchard, do you still want to continue with your motion after hearing counsel?
I accept this members of the same committee issue. What I'm getting at, and the short answer is yes, but I think I can see a huge barrier that supervisors could be totally shut out from the possibility of introducing any legislation.
So you're saying the 4 ways that we have laid out for supervisors to bring resolutions to the floor, that you feel like you still have a dead end?
Possibly they do have a dead end.
Right. So
I guess like a little more open procedure.
Sure.
And I understand. I intentionally took the language out about being drafted by the corporation counsel.
Sure. Supervisor Masters, you had your hand up. Okay, Supervisor Bonifaz?
I feel that this is a double standard. I felt that the 4 ways that there is now, and like I spoke, as we are policy makers, and so those decisions have to come from our council and our administrator, and I feel sufficient that the 4 ways proposed are more than adequate without adding anything else, and I wouldn't be in favor of that.
Yes, the question's been called. Supervisor Milvin, you haven't spoke to that, and I can't tell. Do you have any comments? Hear none? Okay, the question's been called. Oh, you're there?
No, I'm good. And I apologize that I had the wrong button going there. And I guess, I mean, I can see that it might feel duplicative, but I also am interested in having another avenue, and any more openness is always, I always vote for that.
Thank you. All right, question's been called.
We should make it clear on what they're voting for.
Yeah, so I'm going to have the clerk read back what we are actually,
I apologize. Can you repeat that? I couldn't find it within the... I think he was through with his. Okay. So I said...
He said he would.
No, he didn't withdraw.
I think he did.
No. To any.
To add the option of to create a resolution where any 3 supervisors can go to Corporation Council to after draft a resolution. I think he said have it approved as a form. So have it approved as a form.
Okay, everyone understands then voting for that, you're adding one more question. The question's been called.
Mr. Chair, can I read it again? I don't think that was what I had said before.
Sure, you sure can, Supervisor Pritchard. Please read it very specifically.
And I said any 3 supervisors may propose a resolution that, after review and approval as to form by corporate counsel, shall be placed on an agenda of a standing committee for consideration.
Okay, I think we understand. So, Supervisor Arcan. Okay, so roll call vote has been called for. We'll take the roll. What you are doing is you guys are considering a motion to add a 5th way for resolutions to be drafted, that 3 supervisors can go and present a resolution and develop the form, have it approved as to form by Corporation Council, and then it would be heard at a committee level.
Okay, no. Prime member.
No.
Michael Pritchard.
Yes.
Jim Edgell.
No.
Tim O'Connell.
Yes.
Amy Middleton.
Yes.
Jay Luke.
No.
Fran Hutchinson. No. Russ Arkan.
Yeah.
John Bonifay.
No.
Rose Emily.
No.
Brad Olson.
No.
Doug Rhodey.
No.
Steve Wardell.
No.
So one of the things we have talked about that we are going to do, because we're on audio, is we're going to have the clerk read back the votes just so the public can understand how everyone voted. It's not that we're going to have another chance to change your vote, but this is the vote.
You're gonna look at each thing and just make sure the public hears how they go. Just don't want to pick up to make this all.
And I don't see how this. Okay, Brad Olson, voted no. Doug Rowdy, no. Steve Warndall, no. Tracy LeBlanc, no. Brian Masters, no. Pritchard, yes. Edgel, no. O'Connell, yes. Middleton, yes. Luke, no. Duncanson, no. Arcand, yes. Bonifaz, no. Demmeling, no. For a total of 4 yeses and 10 noes.
So that motion failed. Any other motions to the rules of order? Supervisor Bonifaz.
At the green light. I'd like to explain what he said. Any 3 supervisors. The reason why I voted no, because any 3 supervisors.
We don't really need to know why you voted no.
Oh.
So we're going to skip that.
It could be a quorum.
It doesn't matter. Supervisor Rowdy, you have any other?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. We had a discussion today in public safety and public works. And what we are discussing is that we have the sheriff's department, I'd start there, with a recreation officer, and we deal with roads for ATVs and UTVs. We'd like to have that moved to our committee for discussions of working with ATVs and UTV clubs. There's one south, there's one north, the county has one.
So just a motion?
Yes.
Move order?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. To put that onto our committee. Is that, Jay, that's the way you want to say it, right?
Okay. So we got a motion by Supervisor Rowdy, and we got a second by Supervisor Demling.
To move, be really specific on what we're moving.
We're asking to move ATV, UTV usage and tourism with that group to our committee, out of environmental and tourism.
You want to move tourism?
No, not tourism. The tourism aspect of ATVs, UTVs.
And
so we have a first and a second that you want to move ATVs,
UTVs,
and UTVs under public safety. Gotcha. All right. So is there any further discussion on that motion? Supervisor Bonifaz.
And I think we added recreational. The sheriff's department has a strictly recreational officer, and he checks for violations on water. So I think we added recreational, and I think, did that include snowmobiles? And the sheriff made a comment on that he was that he would be in favor of that, and we voted unanimously. And the highway department already puts up the signs for snowmobiles and ATVs, so they're involved in that. So it just seemed to be the proper thing, unanimous, that it was under the public protection and the public works.
Sure. Supervisor Duncanson?
I have a question because those are issues of great interest to my constituents. So if I understand this correctly, would this remove that from environmental services and put it to the other committee, or would environmental services continue to deal with ATV, UTV issues, and which one of the two bodies would be dealing with issues?
So yours is more of a question. You have a question.
I do. I know.
So who would answer a question like Corporation Counsel on that?
If we were to move all of the responsibility from environmental services for trails, when we are right at the end of our second go-around of the master plan for the Stour, it would be very troublesome for staff. I certainly think that this would be a good discussion at the executive committee, as we're talking about not a department reporting, because the trail stuff is under the Environmental Services Division. And so that's why they're currently reporting to the Environmental Services Committee. So we would have a division director in some aspects reporting to Public Safety, Public Works, and the rest of it to Environmental Services. So I would caution any decision today about removing the topic entirely from Environmental Services and placing it on a different committee. But I certainly think it's a discussion that should be had at the executive committee, so that we can really have staff inform the executive committee about the pitfalls that they see in the wholesale moving. Because at this point we are, again, right at the very end of the second go-around of the master planning process for this tower.
Supervisor Demling had his hand up first.
Because one of the questions, one of the things that was brought up in the meeting today was that the Sheriff's Department already has the watercraft for checking. They already have the ATVs for the trail. And we hear 3 months ago, Supervisor Rowdy and me were kind of assigned to a committee to get the northern and southern UTVs and ATVs together and try to find ways to open up the county forest and stuff when they go through and log it off to the trail, have them all open to UTVs and ATVs to try to get better routing is what we were.
So the chair would also just like you guys consider that maybe this could be tabled and laid out for a date certain, because I get there's probably some credibility on the fact that a lot of ATVs are on the public highways, and they're not technically on a trail, and there may be some conflict, and I certainly would hope that, just an alternative for you guys to run it back to the executive committee. Supervisor Bonaprise?
I believe our motion that, check with our chair, Jay Lou. I believe our motion at unanimous was to move it for discussion to the executive committee. And the executive committee could certainly, and the highways net would certainly be working with the environmental on what's been done.
Corporation Counsel, because can't these rules of order during the course of the year, if we need to change them, we can come back to the county board and make changes to these rules of order, just so the new supervisors know that you can kick this can again, correct?
So a couple of things. If you tabled it, in other words, you laid it on the table and postponed to a date certain, you could amend the rules on this particular topic with a simple majority, because you're continuing that part of the organizational meeting. If you don't lay it on the table and just want to amend the rules of order at some point later on in the year for whatever reason, it would require a 2/3 majority. But if I may, this is a topic that is of high concern to the citizens. And right now, if you make any major changes, we would have some concerns about the open meetings law, because just because we have the generic label of, duties of standing committees, that does not inform the public that there might be a wholesale change in the governing committee of the trail issue. So I would highly recommend that it be laid on the table.
Supervisor Arcan?
Just a point, anyone who's not speaking needs to shut their mics off, I think, because the whole room is just vibrating with sound.
Supervisor Masters?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was at that meeting today, and I believe Dr. Bonaprise was right. They did recommend that it went to the executive committee for discussion, and Malia has indicated so forth, so I've already made that adjustment to put that on the executive committee.
Supervisor Rowdy?
I would be in favor of changing my motion to postpone this discussion for, whichever. Because Leah said it's a flowing document and we can take care of it at another time.
Second is an agreement?
Okay. Can we have a voice vote on that? All in favor? Saying aye. Opposed? Same sign. Carried will be dealt with later. Supervisor Gemling.
One of the questions I have is, okay, that's fine and dandy, but we're losing communications around here. One committee is saying this, and the rest of the committees are not being informed.
I know, but I think we just dealt with that. So it's going to executive committee. We're going to inform everybody.
But how many times does this have to happen? This is what was happening before.
Okay, so hopefully we'll get to the bottom of that. Any other motions or amendments to the rules of order? Supervisor Middleton, do you have any other discussions on rules of order?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm good.
Supervisor Pritchard, do you have anything else?
Can I ask a question of Corporation Counsel?
Go ahead.
As they're written now, if a resolution comes before the board, before it's gone to a committee, does it still require a 2/3 vote? And I wasn't going through the draft briefly this afternoon. I wasn't able to see that.
It would still require the 2/3 vote to take direct action. So, for example, in an emergency situation, to bring it to the floor would require a 2/3 vote, but it would still then only require a simple majority to pass once it has been brought to the floor.
Thank you.
Okay. So I call the question. Question's been called. 4318. So,
At a 2020 number, but.
Do we know what that number is? We're working on it. Ordinance number 1320. All in favor by saying aye. All opposed by saying the same sign. Carried unanimous. Next item is establishing duties, responsibilities, and assigned functions of the county board standing committees. We already have taken care of B with our rules of order. C, nomination appointments, confirmations of supervisors of county board non-standing committees. So I guess at this point, can I discuss or do we get a motion and then?
No, this is you appoint.
This is my appointment. So here's what I have asked this part to be reviewed at the executive committee. I've asked Supervisor Masters to be the point person. Anyone that wants to stay on committees they are on, or anyone that wants to make recommendations, please contact Supervisor Masters, and we are going to review those at the executive committee, and we will be back at our next county board, and we will announce them at that point. Right now, if there's any committees that need to be held, I know one supervisor. I am appointing Jay Luke to be the CCJC director, so that one has been taken care of. Supervisor Masters, was there any other on the list that were already done deals?
Just except for the one of the supervisors that have left, they have to fill in some spots for a few of them, and a couple of the supervisors like not the answer.
Can you please talk in your mic?
I got your hearing aids. I'm in the back. I don't know how I hear. Anyway, yes, I have a sheet here with the supervisors' names that have
that have not returned to be on these standing committees.
Why don't you just go through the list real quick? Just read off the list so everyone understands the list.
Well, there's the ADRC.
And who's on it now?
Tracy LeBlanc and Joe Demling, and Dean Johansson is not here, so I have a recommendation for that one. You've already made the...
So how about if we take care of these right now? Does anyone want to get off those committees or get on those committees?
Tracy's already indicated that she would like to get off the ADRC committee, and we could appoint somebody else.
Okay, so Tracy's moving that, so there's going to be an opening in that.
Mm-hmm.
So how many openings are on the ADRC committee? 2?
Well, there's 2, because Joe's already on it, so...
So how about if we reappoint tonight? Joe is going to stay on that committee, Joe? So Joe's on it. You know, and if there's not more than 2 asking to be on that committee, then I would say we could just appoint them right now and be done with this, right?
You sure can.
Who else would
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Pritchard.
Did we change the rules? I believe that all of these appointments on this list are for the administrator to make. I know there was something about...
Nope, you're wrong on that, so that's okay. Thanks for the question. Brian?
I thought the executive committee was going to recommend to the administrator.
Nope. So Supervisor Masters, keep going. Do you want to be on one of those committees, Supervisor Pritchard?
We'll wait till we get to it, okay?
Okay. Thank you. Again, Jay has been appointed to CJCC. Terry Hauser is the EDC.
Howard.
Excuse me.
Howard.
Well, it says Hauser.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Let's correct that spelling.
All right. I got Fran Duncanson of the Arnell Humane Society.
Okay. Does anyone else want to sit on that? That's basically Joe Demling. Oh, there's one person on it. Mick Larson was on it previous, so I will appoint Fran to that.
Okay. Mick Larson was also on Economic Development Corporation. I would like to be on that. I haven't been on any outside committees for 2 years now, and I wouldn't mind being on that committee.
And I know you asked to be on that a couple of years ago. I will appoint you to the EDC committee.
All right. And Tracy LeBlanc would like to part from the CDGB, of course, it's a consortium part of EDC. Maybe, Tracy, I'm not sure what that is. Do you know? I don't think you have been to a meeting. She didn't even know if she was on it, so okay. I've got Fran Duncanson or Amy Middleton that they want to be.
Fran, you have your hand up. You'll get on that committee.
Community Development Block Grant?
I'm not sure what it is.
Excuse me.
Yes, that's what it is. Okay.
I would say that.
Yep, Supervisor.
If Amy would prefer to be on that, I'll give her first dib because something I know that deals with is perhaps something she has an interest in housing.
Amy, would you want to sit on that committee?
Well, maybe we should just move on from that one.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we can get back to her.
Let's see. Okay, we'll leave that one open for now.
Yeah. Let's see. West Central Regional Planning, I have Tracy LeBlanc on that. I don't know if she wants to stay on that. She does, so I said yes. So she will be on, well, okay.
So the 2 supervisors on it. We have one,
Joe Demling.
And we have a citizen that gets appointed by the administrator, and I believe the administrator was going to run appointments through the executive committee to vet. Is that correct, Administrator? Do you want to make those?
I think it was discussed that the executive committee would have the opportunity to make recommendations to the administrator, but it solely lands in the administrator's responsibility to make the appointments. But I will gladly listen to any recommendations.
So all the citizen appointments in the county, so the public can hear this too, we will run the citizen appointments through the executive committee and then work with the administrator to vet them, or if there's more than one that wants to be on it, we'll discuss that executive committee. So if anyone in the public or any supervisor wants to put something through on that, please notify again Supervisor Masters or the chair or the administrator to have that on our list. Supervisor Masters?
Yeah, I have, three other ones here, or four actually. West Cap, Larry Jepson's old spot. Amy,
are you with us yet?
I think she.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I got in my agenda and I couldn't get back over to the screen here. Did we get more clarity on that previous committee that Brian was talking about?
We're on West Cap right now, Amy.
I could read it to you.
Yeah, I just didn't want to overcommit. And Chris, you and I are doing that ad hoc trail piece. I don't know where that fits in on this too.
That hasn't been actually fleshed out yet through the committee, so that will be coming. Administrator Netherland will fill in.
Yeah, the question on the CDBG consortium or Community Development Block Grant, it's part of the Economic Development Corporation. It's a program of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, funds local community development activities with the stated goal of providing affordable housing, anti-poverty programs, and infrastructure development. So, Tracy mentioned that you've never had a meeting with these folks?
There's been meetings, but I didn't know I was on the committee.
Okay.
And nobody said anything.
I would just say, yeah, well, this is, I don't know, and we have not been notified, so it's something.
Does anyone know how often? Well, that's it. So twice.
Tim Anderson would be the one to ask.
Who?
Tim Anderson.
So, Amy, would you like to defer? It doesn't sound like it's a whole bunch of meetings. Would you like to grab that while you got the chance?
Sure, I'll take that.
All right, thank you. And the next one we were at was Supervisor Masters. What were we at again?
So which one did you?
West Cap. She did this. Yeah. She's taking over for Tracy on the block grant. Very good. Thank you. Now we're on West Cap.
We're on West Cap, and
I believe Amy, you had interest in West Cap, right?
I did, but it sounds like actually this CDJC is more up my alley, maybe. I don't think I could be on two of them, so I guess I'd defer if somebody thinks it's better for me to be on West Cap. But if there's a piece in the housing stuff, then
Supervisor Luke said he would do it.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, then Supervisor Luke. Thank you.
Then there's WICC Board Nominating Committee. Actually, as County Board Chair, Mr. Nelson, I guess you're kind of one by default to be on that one. And then there's one more for Workforce Development County Consortium. That was also Larry's committee.
Can anyone explain what that? Fran, you would do that?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I do have some familiar somewhat with their program through the Amory Economic Development Corporation's participation in that.
Okay.
So I would be happy to serve on that.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. NorTrack, that's what ask under you because you were on last year.
You know, and that comes back to this whole trail thing. I think let's throw that back at executive because that might have something to do with the highway stuff and it might have something to do with environmental services. And I personally think someone from environmental services or someone working on trails should sit on that. I currently sit on that. I will continue to do it. But I'll just tell everyone it's about 4 meetings a year, and it's basically talking about conductivity to trails, mostly motorized trails at this point. And it's 10 county consortium that meets up in Spooner 4 times a year. It's about a 3 or 4 hour meeting. So I almost feel like environmental services, someone on environmental services committee should probably take that job, but I certainly as a chair will do it. I know there's other county chairs that are on that committee, and I don't mind staying on it, but if someone else wanted it, I had no problem.
Then mostly, are you done?
I'm done.
Okay. Mostly after that, there's just a lot of yellow fill in. It looks like it's for the Health and Human Services, LEPAC, LEPC. I know, John, you're on it. Do you want to stay on it? Is that a yes? Okay. Because it looks like a number of those expirations are from earlier this year, January 1st of 2020. So I don't know how often they meet. Maybe John can explain it.
He took it. Let's just keep moving.
Okay. Let's see here. I think I have. Just want to make sure that I got them all here.
Anything we're short on, we'll just deal with it.
Yeah, because there's only a couple of them that I have now on here.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would have filled in. Okay.
Okay, anyone wants to talk to Brian, or Brian wants to talk to anyone? You guys got it. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Second by Fran. All in favor by saying aye? Aye. Passes.
Aye.